Hello again, my little Clanrats, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be casting our superior eyes over the Skaven faction for Warhammer the Old World. We shall be delving into the nitty-gritty of all the different units, having a look at their pros and cons, and deciding if they are smash or pass. And so without further ado, let's die man-thing and scurry quick into today's episode.
Attention conscripts, I am excited to announce the launch of the official second Mordian Glory channel. If you're curious, click on the link down in the description and head over to Mordian Glory Games. I upload to the channel several times a week with all sorts of fun and silly gaming content. So if you're jonesing for even more Mordian Glory content, then head on over to Mordian Glory Games and don't forget to subscribe.
Now, normally when I do these reviews, I get straight into the units, but with Skaven, things are a little trickier. A lot of your units are linked to certain characters and clans that you have represented in your army. So what I'm going to do first instead is quickly run through the Grand Army composition list, because hopefully this will give a bit of context, and I want you all to keep this at the back of your minds when we are looking at the units later on. So, in your Skaven army, you can have up to 50% of your army spent on characters. You can take 0 to 1 Skaven Warlord or Greyseer per 1000 points. You can also take 0 to 1 Clan Skryre Warlock Engineer, Clan Eshin Master Assassin, or Clan Pestilens Plague Priest per 1000 points. This is very restrictive because a lot of your other units, as you'll see later on, can only be taken if you have the associated clan leader in your army. So for example, you could only take 0 to 1 unit of Warplock Jezzails per Clan Skryre Warlock Engineer taken. But the maximum number of engineers you can take in a 2000 point army is 2. And if you take 2 engineers, it means that you then start to struggle to take the Master Assassins or the Plague Priests. On a more positive note, you can take as many Skaven Chieftains as you want. For your core, you can take 0 to 1 units of Stormvermin per 1000 points. Now, this would be really good. Any army that can take more elite units as core is at a big advantage. I find this all the time with my dwarves. Being able to take my longbeards as core is fantastic. The problem with this is the next section. You have to take 1+ unit of Clanrats per 1000 points. This means that typically you're going to end up with at least a lot of your core being taken up by Clanrats anyway, and so it kind of, the two rules don't seem to complement each other very well. But on the other hand, you can take as many Night Runners, Giant Rats, and Rat Swarms as you like. There's no funny rules around those. But speaking of funny rules, this is where it really starts coming in. We get to the special section. Now, you can spend 50% of your points on your special units, and we start off strong with Gutter Runners just being allowed. You don't need to have any Master Assassins to access the Gutter Runners. But then you get to things like the Plague Monks. 0 to 1 unit of Plague Monks per Plague Priest taken. 0 to 1 unit of Warlock Jezzails per Warlock Engineer taken. And 0 to 1 unit per of Poison Wing Globadiers per Warlock Engineer. You can take 0 to 2 units of Rat Ogres per 1000 points, and those aren't linked to any character. But as you can see, there is a lot of, well, if you don't have an engineer, you don't get the Skryre units. Moving on to rare, you can take 0 to 1 Hell Pit Abominations per 1000 points. That's really good, and I have seen some Skaven armies with double Hell Pit do quite well. You can also take 0 to 1 Doom Wheel or Warp Lightning Cannon per 1000 points, as long as you have 1 or more Clan Skryre Warlock Engineers. So interestingly, that feels a little bit less restrictive than the special section. And then you've got the ability to take 0 to 1 Plagueclaw Catapult or Plague Censer Bearers per 1000 points, as long as your army contains 1 or more Clan Pestilens Plague Priests. Taking all of this into account, and you start to realize that building a Skaven army list is actually quite restrictive. And it's one of the biggest things you're going to need to get to grips with when you're considering which units are going to be in your army and which units are going to be smash or pass. But speaking of units, we should probably get into them now. And let's begin with the characters and the commanders of the Warlord clans. And here we find the typical old world formula. There are two kinds of commander you can take, Warlords and Chieftains. Warlords are bigger and better in nearly every way, but they cost significantly more. And remember, you can only take one per 1,000 points. Chieftains are much cheaper, but their stat line isn't quite as good. Comparing the Warlord to the Chieftain, the Warlord has weapon skill 6 and also has 3 wounds and initiative 7 and 4 attacks and leadership 7. And the Skaven Chieftain has got 1 less weapon skill, has got 1 less wound and 1 less initiative and attacks and leadership. But the Skaven Chieftain is only 45 points, where the Warlord is a whopping 90 points. And it's also important to note that depending on which level of commander you go for will determine how much magical equipment you can get. So a Warlord can get up to 100 points of magical equipment, which is important because he's the only guy that can take the Fellblade, which is a really good bit of Skaven kit, and the Chieftain can only take 50 points. How you want to use these guys is your Warlord is going to be there with his leadership 7. You want to combine that with his warband rule so that he will be handing out leadership 10 to the unit he's leading or those around him if he is the army general. Skaven Chieftains are cheap, disposable characters with a decent number of attacks. Getting 3 attacks base is quite good. That does make me jealous as an Empire player where my captains are the same cost and yet they only have 2 attacks base. So you want to use them as sort of cheap leaders for units that are going to give them that extra little bit of punch, because without them your Clanrats and stuff might struggle to do any real damage. Overall, I give both Skaven Warlords and Chieftains a pretty confident smash. I like them. I've seen them used in many Skaven armies. They always seem to have a place and they're pretty cheap for what you get. Next up, we have the Greyseers. These are the principal magic users of the Skaven army. They have a decent stat line. Like all Skaven, they do have that very tasty movement 5. So when you march, they can go 10 inches, which is good. And then they've got toughness 4, which is cool. Was not expecting that from a Greyseer. And they've got 3 wounds. And also they have got 2 attacks and leadership 7. But you don't really worry about the leadership because they have warband. And you don't really worry about the attacks because they're not really doing any damage in close combat. They start off as level 3. They can be upgraded to level 4. They can go on a Screaming Bell, but that is very expensive. And they can take up to 100 points of magical equipment. They also come with D3 Warpstone tokens, so you can eat some green magic crack, and you can do your spells a little bit more powerfully. Greyseers are really good. And because they are basically your only source of level 4 magic, they get an auto smash, right? The problem is they are bloody expensive. 185 points base. That's before you put the level 4 on them. When you make them level 4, even without the Screaming Bell, you're looking at well over 200 points on one character. And then you've got the magical equipment to take into account on top of that. They've got access to a lot of different laws, battle magic, demonology, dark magic, elementalism, illusion. But that is a very, very steep price to pay for a level 4. When you consider that the Empire get their level 4s. And Empire's not Empire, you might be thinking, why do I keep comparing Skaven to Empire? Because they actually are remarkably similar in terms of like sort of power and abilities. Especially with just like characters we've seen, the points seem quite similar with like the chieftains and the captains. But when you compare Greyseers to an Empire captain, an Empire mage, I should say, I can get a level 4 for 190 points. That is a serious discount over that of Greyseer. So Greyseers are good, and like I said, they get the auto smash, but I do feel like they're slightly overcosted. But if you prefer your magic to come from a more technological means, then we have the Clan Skryre Warlock Engineers. These guys are dirt cheap. They're 35 points, and they basically come with a Clanrats stat line, but with 1 extra attack and 1 extra wound. The big thing about Clan Skryre Warlock Engineers is they don't start off as mages. So you think 35 points, sweet, they can do magic. No, you have to pay 40 points if you want to make one a level 1 wizard, or you have to pay 70 points if you want to make them a level 2 wizard. Once again, it seems like Skaven are paying a premium for magic. If I compare that to the level 2 wizards of Empire and Bretonnia, they're only spending 90 points on theirs. I suspect this hidden cost is coming from the fact that you get the D3 Warpstone tokens for free, which again do boost your magic. And so because of this, I do feel like Warlock Engineers, and it might be controversial to say this, and I know a lot of Skaven players like to take theirs as level 1, it's kind of like traditional from old rulebooks and stuff, but I think that your engineers should be taken as cheap as possible to just unlock the Skryre units, and if you've got no intention of taking Skryre units, then they should be left at home. The next character we're looking at is the Clan Eshin Master Assassins. These guys are really cool. They've got movement 6. So if they march, they go 12 inches. That's almost as fast as some cavalry out there. They've also got an insane weapon skill 8. That's like elven levels of weapon skill. Ballistic skill 7 and their strength 4, toughness 4, initiative 8 with 3 attacks. They do only have 2 wounds, which is phenomenally poo. And they are 90 points, which is a little pricey. For that, you do get 2 hand weapons and throwing weapons. You can take up to 50 points of equipment, and you get a laundry list of special rules. They are natively ambushers. They have got the special rule Eshin Infiltration, which we'll get to in a moment, evasive, feigned flight, fire and flee, hidden, move through cover, poison attacks, scurry away, verminous valor, and warpstone weapons. Eshin Infiltration is unique to the unit. When a friendly unit of gutter runners with the ambush special rule arrives from reserve, it can be placed on the battlefield anywhere completely within 12 inches of a revealed Master Assassin, but not within 6 inches of any enemy models, rather than entering the battle as reinforcements. The unit cannot charge during this turn and can't be moved for the purposes of shooting, but otherwise can act as normal. Note that this character cannot use the special rule whilst it remains hidden. Well, I suppose we should take a look at the hidden special rule then, shouldn't we? Master Assassins are not placed in the battlefield at the start of the game. Instead, they are hidden within a friendly Skaven unit whose troop type is infantry, and that unit has a strength of 10 or more. Make a note of which unit each Master Assassin is hiding within. A hidden Master Assassin may be revealed during the start of turn subphase or at the start of any combat phase. Position the revealed Master Assassin as you would a character that has joined the unit. If a unit in which a Master Assassin is hiding is destroyed or flees the battlefield before the Master Assassin is revealed, the Master Assassin is removed as a casualty. A Master Assassin cannot be your army general. From a rule of cool perspective, I really like Clan Eshin Master Assassins. I think that they are hiding and lurking in units. I think they're a real wild card for your opponent. Does he charge into what looks like an innocuous unit and then actually a Master Assassin jumps out and starts doing some damage to him? They've got poison attacks. Like, I do think that they're kind of good. But it is not a required unit. You see, unlike Skryre and Pestilens, you don't need Master Assassins to unlock Gutter Runners or Night Runners. And so I think that for a lot of people, they're probably just going to end up leaving them at home because it's like 90 points for a 2 wound character. And you would be better off just not taking the Master Assassin and instead putting those points into more of the Gutter Runners, because Gutter Runners are actually good, as we'll see later on. The last character that we need to have a little gander at is the Plague Priests of Clan Pestilens. Movement 5, Weapon Skill 5, Ballistic Skill 3, Strength 4, Toughness 5. That's a big toughness for a Skaven character. Only 2 wounds again. Initiative 5, Attacks 3, Leadership 6, 60 points. They come equipped with a hand weapon. They are potentially magical. They don't start off magical, But like the Warlock Engineer, you can make them magical for 30 points for level 1 or 60 points for level 2. But remember, you do not get Warpstone tokens with these guys, hence why their magical levels are a little bit cheaper. If you do go for a Plague Priest, you can choose from Battle Magic, Demonology, or Dark Magic laws. You can give them an additional hand weapon. They can take a Plague Censer, which is Strength +2, AP -1, poisoned attacks, requires 2 hands. A Plague Censor's Strength modifier applies only during the first round of combat. In addition, during the combat phase, a model armed with the Plague Censer may reroll any rolls to wound of a natural 1. So it's like a flail that's poisoned and gets reroll 1s to wound. You do have a special rule called Cloud of Flies. An enemy model that directs attacks against Cat during the combat phase suffers a -1 modifier to its rolls to hit. That's going to be really important because you have no other real ways of getting durability. Because you can't take any armor, and because you can't take mundane armor, you can't take magical armor. This is something that a lot of people don't realize. What a lot of Beastman players were getting wrong at the beginning of the edition, because they were taking Dragon Ogres and then giving them the Charm Shield to try and get like a 2-up save, and they can't do that because you have to be able to take the mundane version of an item if you can take a magical item. So best case scenario, you could probably stick like a Talisman of Protection or similar on your Plague Priest, but that's the only protection they're going to have. -1 to hit and a 5-up ward save. It's not great when you're on a 2 wound character. Basically, Plague Priests are glass hammers. They've got no durability, but they do have that natural extra Skaven movement and initiative, so often they will be striking first. And they do have Frenzy, so they'll have 4 attacks with that Plague Censer. However, I think they are a pass. They're just too expensive. 60 points, and then if you want to start making them magical, it's just crazy. Yeah, I mean, if you were to take a level 1 Plague Priest, you'd be paying as much as I'm taking a level 2 Empire Bretonnian Wizard for. It's just not great. So I think the Plague Priest stay at home unless you really, really, really want the Pestilens of the units. And then you have to take them to unlock them. But that's enough about characters. Let's look at some infantry. The infantry corps! Every day in the corps is like a day on the farm. Every meal a banquet, every paycheck a fortune, every formation a parade. I love the corps. Starting off, we have the Stormvermin. Movement 5, weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 5s, and 1 attack, leadership 5, 10 points a pop. That might seem like a bit of an eclectic stat line because it's like good movement, good weapon skill, good initiative, bad leadership. But don't worry too much about the bad leadership. They do have close order and Horde and Warband, so you are actually going to more than likely be getting +3 onto that leadership. And then you bear in mind that the Fanged leader, the squad leader, the champion, is leadership 6. These guys are really going to be leadership 9, and if there's a character in there leadership 7, they're going to be leadership 10. So Stormvermin's low leadership is deceptive. They can be quite high leadership if you need them to be. But bear in mind, as they take more casualties, their leadership is going to go down as they lose those warband rank bonuses. Some people might think that Stormvermin are kind of pricey, but it's important to bear in mind that they come as standard with halberds and heavy armor, and that's already been paid for. In a lot of other armies, you would pay 1 point for the halberds and maybe 2 points for the heavy armor. You know, maybe 1 point for light armor, 2 points for heavy, that kind of vibe. So these guys, really, their base cost coming in is sort of 7 to 8 points, and then when you take their equipment into account, paying 10 points actually seems pretty fair. Halberds are great. I love halberds. I take halberds at every opportunity I can, and heavy armor is also not to be sniffed at. A 5-up save on its own isn't much, but being able to combine these guys with something like Earthen Ramparts, which Skaven do have access to elementalism magic, and having a big block of these guys with a 5-up, 5-up is pretty decent. You can, if you want to make them a little more tankier, give them shields, but then you have to pay for shields. I would have liked to have seen the ability to swap the halberds out for shields for free, so you could have Stormvermin with sword and board or Stormvermin with halberds and heavy armor. But because you have to pay for the shields, I'd probably leave them at home most of the time. Overall, I'm going to give Stormvermin a resounding Smash. I think they have a home in nearly every Skaven army. A lot of people are going to want to lean on Clanrats because you have to take them to fill out your core, but I think your Clanrats, they provide the numbers, but the Stormvermin give you something which Skaven can struggle with. They give you a little bit of capability. But speaking of Clanrats, they are up next. They come in at 4 points per model, and you get a lot for that 4 points. They're movement 5, they have weapon skill 3, and they have initiative 4. Sure, the rest of their stat line is what you would expect, a whole bunch of 3s in weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness. Of course, they're only 1 wound and they've only got 1 attack. But movement 5 with weapon skill 3 is higher than I would expect from this unit, especially when you look at something like Bretonnians, men-at-arms, or Goblins, which tend to be about the same points as Clanrats, and yet they have less movement and they have less weapon skill. I suppose the leadership 4 is meant to offset a lot of these other bits, but remember, you have got Close Order, Horde, and Warband. So just like with your Stormvermin, that low leadership can be easily mitigated, although it will start to crumble a bit when the casualties start to mount up. Now, your Clanrats do also come equipped with light armor as standard. That's baked into their cost. You can pay to give them spears and shields, 1 point a pop. You can also give them full command, and the big thing is they can take weapon teams. So, in fact, most Skaven units can take weapon teams, like your Stormvermin can as well. This is what makes Clanrats go from being attacks to actually something half decent. Yes, you do have to take a minimum of 20 of them in each squad. Yes, at 2,000 points, you will have to take 2 blobs of these. My advice would be, don't expect the Clanrats to do all that much. I would potentially not give them any upgrades whatsoever. Like, leave the spears at home, leave the shields at home. What I would do is take them in these blocks of 20, maybe just 80 points each, and then get the weapon teams. Because rattling guns, they're the weapon team you really want to go for, are bloody fantastic. So they are a smash, and they're a smash not just because you need to take them, but also because I think you're going to want to take them. And I know many of you are going to be curious about the weapon teams, so let's look at them right away. Each weapon team essentially consists of 2 Skaven. They've got movement 5, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 3, 2 wounds, initiative 3, 2 attacks, and leadership 4. It's 1 model with 2 wounds, it's basically 2 rats strapped together. The good thing though is that if you take 1 wound, you don't lose a rat, you don't lose the weapon team, right? Now they start off as 15 points, and then you have to buy the weapon. Doomflayers are 40 points, wind mortars are 55 points, rattling guns are 50 points, fire throwers are 60 points, and warp grinders are 30 points. The Doom Flare is a combat weapon at strength 4, AP -1. It has counter charge, which is amazing, an extra attacks D6, and impact hits D6 +1. Impact hits caused by this weapon have an armor piercing characteristic of -2. Now, Doomflayers are expensive at 40 points each, but that's a potentially quite a decent amount of attacks. The fact that you're getting 2 attacks base plus an extra attack to D6 means an average of 5 to 6 attacks. With your Skaven initiative 3, to be fair, is a little bit lower, but then if you charge, you will be up to initiative 6, so you should still be striking first. And then you've got the impact hits as well, which D6 +1, which are another 4 to 5 hits and attacks. You could be getting double digits of attacks out of this thing. So I do quite like Doomflares, although of course the problem is that they have to get to the enemy, and bear in mind that you have light armor. A handful of bow shots might deal with your Doomflares before they reach the enemy, although there are ways of mitigating that. Poison Wind Mortars are what you would expect. They are a light mortar. They have range 6 to 24 inches. They are strength 2/4, 4 if you get hit under the central hole. They are move or shoot, and the weapon shoots like a stone thrower using the bombardment special rule, a 3-inch blast and blade, and the black powder misfire table. They also have the poisoned wind special rule. You've got Warp Fire Throwers, which are just a micro fire thrower. So range 6 inches, strength 4, AP -1, column of fire, cumbersome, flaming attacks. If you sort of know what dwarf flame cannons do, these are small versions of that. Big things, of course, that any unit that suffers 1 or more unsafe wounds from its weapon must make a panic test as if it had taken heavy casualty. So it will flee. If it fails it will flee, potentially. And then you've got the Warp Grinder. This is another combat one, and it allows you to ambush. It's kind of cool. So it's strength 5, AP -3, killing blow. And if the Warp Grinder ambushes the unit, the parent unit gets to ambush as well. So basically it's like a little mining weapon. It's really good. But the big one, and in all truth, the go-to, the one you should be taking every single time, is the Rattling Gun. Range 18, strength 4, AP -1, armor bane, multi-barreled, quick shot. This weapon shoots like an organ gun using the multi-barrel special rule and the black powder misfire table. Essentially, you roll 2 artillery dice, and that's the number of shots that you get. Because you're quick shot, you don't really care about moving and shooting, you just care about long range. And so you could be generating a lot of attacks from these things. I have stared into the face of someone who brought 3 Rattling Guns, and they completely scythed down a brick of 40 Empire Halberdiers. It took them a few goes, like a few turns. But if you bear in mind that those Rattling Guns added up to about 180, 195 points, and the big brick of Halberdiers cost 255 points, you get an idea, like, yeah, they are good. And when leveraged en masse, they should be the go-to. So out of all of these, I think you can basically say most of them are a pass. Like, some of them are cool, like the Doom Flare. Most of them are a pass, but the Rattling Gun is an absolute smash. Small side note, I mentioned how you can mitigate targeting the weapon teams. They do have some special rules. So deploying the weapon team, it must be deployed at the same time as its parent unit and must be deployed within 3 inches. You've got to think of them as detachments and regimental units. And then you've got the weapon team leadership. Whilst within 3 inches of its parent unit, a weapon team gains a positive plus modifier to its leadership category equal to the parent's unit current rank bonus up to a maximum of 10. So you do get to benefit from having rats nearby. And then targeted weapon teams, if it is within 3 inches of its parent unit and this unit contains 5 or more models and itself is not fleeing, a weapon team cannot be targeted by enemy shooting or by enemy spells unless the weapon team is the closest target. So it's kind of like character special rules. It's kind of interesting. So if you keep your Rattling Guns near your blocks of Clanrats, then they can't even be targeted. Sure, you could get them with things like Pillars of Fire. They're not completely untouchable, but this is how you could maybe make the Doomflayer a half-decent unit. You could keep it near the Clanrats and then yeet it forward, and this is how you can keep those Rattling Guns constantly firing. Now, before we move on to our next unit, I just want to say something that I've noticed about weapon teams, but I'm not 100% confident in it, so let me know if I'm wrong about this down in the comment section, and we can all learn from it. But it looks like you don't need a Clan Skryre Warlock Engineer to access weapon teams, even though from a lore perspective, they are from Clan Skryre. Now that's quite a big deal because it means you could potentially get the benefits of Clan Skryre support, access to some pretty powerful weapons without having to pay the Warlock Engineer tax and then restricting you from other characters you might want to take. Not 100% confident in that though, so let me know what you think about that. But one unit which is definitely restricted by Clan Skryre is the Warplock Jezzails. These are essentially Skaven sniper rifles. They are a little pricey at 19 points a pop, and you have to take 3 of them, so it's a minimum cost for a unit of 57 points. But the Jezzails themselves are quite punchy. Strength 6 means that you can threaten characters on dragons and still wound them on 4s. And AP -3 with magical attacks means that they're good into armored units, but also don't underestimate they can go after ethereal things as well. And as someone who has been on the receiving end of the dreaded Tomb Banshees, I can tell you having extra magical attacks is never a bad thing. They can be surprisingly durable, even though they're only 2 wounds with toughness 3. They do get a 4+ armor save a lot of the time, thanks to that big shield. There's a small chance that they're going to blow themselves up, but it's only a little chance, it's not a big one. I'm going to give them a smash. I'm going to give them a smash because they're just really bloody cool. But I'm also going to give them a smash because unless you're facing off against hordes, these things are actually quite decent. Being able to chip off wounds from big monsters, big things, is good. That strength 6 is very, very tasty. And they're also surprisingly decent into enemy war machines as well, considering that you will be able to wound most war machines you come across on a 4, and then they're not going to have a save because war machines don't really have saves. You could find your Warlock Jezzails outranging and picking off an enemy cannon over the course of the game. And if they do that, they will more than earn their points back. Next, we have the Poison Wind Globadiers. These guys are also really, really cool. They are a basic Skaven stat line, and they are 10 points a pop, which is quite expensive. It is expensive. They only come with light armor, but they do have skirmishers, but still, they're pretty easy to kill. The big thing is their weapons, the Poison Wind Globes. They're only range 9, but they are move and shoot and quick shot, and they have the Poison Wind special rule, which means that they ignore all armor and they always wound on a roll of 6. They're not poison though, so hit rolls of 6 don't do anything. They just hit. The big thing though is that if they do hit you, they cause D3 hits. So on average, each hit you get is actually going to be 2 hits. I think the problem is the short range and the low strength. If you had a unit of, let's say, 6 of these guys, it's going to cost you 60 points. When you throw your weapons or you do a standard shoot, you're going to hit with maybe 2 or 3 of them. That's going to give you like 4 to 6 hits, which is okay. You've got to wound, and that's going to get like you 2 to 3 wounds. And it's like, yeah, that's okay if you're targeting like a toughness 3 thing, but if you're targeting like anything that's toughness 4 or higher, then you're going to need 6s to wound. So you might not get any wounds. You might get 1. And sure, they're not going to get an armor save against, but they can get a ward save if they've got one. I think, sadly, they're just a little expensive, and the strength 2 is a bit rubbish, and I think it would be much better if they just had poisoned. If they were just poisoned, like AP2 or something mad, they would be actually pretty decent. But I think this is a great example of maybe a unit that has been overthought, and they've tried to make them unique, and the end result is they're cool, but they're kind of crap. But that's enough clan Skryre trickery. Let's get into something that we can really sink our teeth into. Let's look at some Moulder units, starting off with the Rat Swarms. Rat Swarms are just a big pit of unbreakable wounds. That's the only reason you're going to take them. They are movement 6, so they're quite fast. They're weapon skill 2, so they're not going to hit anything. If they do hit, they're only strength 2, so they're not going to wound anything. And they're only toughness 2, so everyone's going to wound them. But they do have 5 attacks and 5 wounds. They are immune to psychology. They're loners, so you can't have anyone join them. They're skirmishers, and they are unbreakable. And they're vanguard, so you can send them forward first. Try and distract the enemy with them. They're a good distraction unit. What kills them, completely kills them, I think just makes them a pass when they should be a smash, is their 36 points, which you're like, oh, that's okay. And you have to take a minimum of 3 of them. So actually, they're like 108 points for like a minimum size squad. If you could take 2 of them, that would be okay. If you could take them in loners, just like ones, and just like yeet them forward, I think that would be kind of good. They could just start nibbling on some other skirmishers or slowly nibble their way through like a war machine or something. That would be great. But having to take 3 of them, I think, just makes them not a cheap bunker of wounds. I think it just makes them an expensive bunker, an expensive just thing. And then we've got a cheeky surprise. We've got some Packmasters and Master Moulders. These really feel like they should be characters. They're not characters, but they feel like they should be characters. Their movement 6, their weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 4, attack 1, leadership 6. If you want it the Packmaster, if you want the Master Moulder, it's basically the same thing, except you get an extra leadership and an extra attack. These are basically unit champions, and you pay for these when you're buying things like Rat Ogres and Giant Rats. This all starts to make a bit more sense when you look at the Leader of the Pack special rule. Models with the special rule can only be taken as part of units of Rat Ogres or Giant Rats. They've always got to go in the rear, and Rat Ogres or Giant Rats have always got to go in the front, pushing past any models with the special rule to get there if necessary. Long story short, the Packmasters and the Master Moulders are poking the big scary things forward. Now, you might be wondering why the hell you would ever really bother with these guys. They're not proper characters. I mean, the Master Moulder can take like 25 points of magical items. Okay. The reason you're going to have them is because they bring amazingly, I know it's going to sound crazy, good, and please understand this is a very relative term, good leadership to the Rat Ogres and the Giant Rats. You see, the Rat Ogres are only leadership 5, and the Giant Rats are an incredible leadership 3. So there's a really good chance that you are going to want to take probably the Master Moulder, because it's 7 points to go up to leadership 7. When you combine that with the fact that, like every other unit, Rat Ogres and Giant Rats have got Warband, and they've got Horde, and they've got Close Order, it means that you can actually get them up to a decent leadership. But talking about Rat Ogres, let's take a look at them. These are one of my favourite units for Skaven. I'm definitely a bit biased towards them, and I'm just going to say it straight away, I think they're a smash. A lot of Skaven players are going to disagree with me on that, but I actually think they're pretty decent, and let me present my reasoning to you. Firstly, they have movement 6. This is surprisingly quick. They're also weapon skill 4 with toughness 4, 3 wounds, and they count as having heavy armor. This is a strong defensive profile. Weapon skill 4 means that a lot of the time, enemy units are going to be hitting you on 4s rather than 3s. Toughness 4 means, again, a lot of the time people are going to be wounding you on 4s rather than 3s. And then also, or sometimes even 5s, and 3 wounds is also a good amount of wounds to have on this kind of unit. Heavy armor is good. Not great, but it's good. It's solid. You then have their offensive capabilities. They are strength 5, so any light infantry is getting wounded on 2s, and even heavier infantry are going to get wounded on 3s. They've got 3 attacks each with Frenzy, so 4 attacks each, and they have Armor Bane 2. This means that any 6s you get to wound are AP minus 2. So they can just slap the crap through volume of attacks out of like light stuff, but if they end up fighting something a bit heavier, they do have some cheeky Armor Bane to actually bludgeon their way through. They also have a cool rule, Safe from Harm, which essentially protects the Packmasters and stuff that join the unit, making it harder for the enemy to target them in combat, and also making it more likely that shots directed at the unit are going to hit the Rat Ogres rather than the Packmasters. The reason why I think so many Skaven players are cold on Rat Ogres is the points cost. They're 48 points a pop, which does seem kind of expensive, and you have to take a minimum squad size of 3 of them, so you are looking at roughly 150 points when you take into account things like the 2 Packmasters that you have to have. But I like them. I think the problem is that a lot of people are taking them as like minimum squad sizes of 3 and they're not quite achieving it. If I was to take these guys, as mad as it sounds, I would consider 4-man or 5-man or maybe even a 6-man squad. Yeah, that's going to be like, with the Packmasters and stuff taken into account, probably a 300-point unit overall. But that 300-point unit can take a few casualties on the way in. That 300-point unit is going to be delivering a lot of Strength 5 attacks. And in my experience, Strength 5 is the sweet spot. Sweet spot in Old World. It's very good. Maybe they're just a bit too expensive. Maybe I am looking at this all wrong. But I'm telling you, as an Empire player, I could get Rat Ogres and probably would take them. We've also got Giant Rats. These guys are dirt cheap. They're 3 points a pop. You're not going to get much for 3 points, let's be real here. Don't have your expectations too high. Weapon skill 2, strength 2, toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 4, 1 attack, leadership 3. But don't forget, you do have to have some Packmasters in there. So you're going to have 1 Packmaster for every 3 Giant Rats. He's 5 points a pop. They are close order with Horde and Warband, so you can actually get them up to a decent leadership. And the big thing is they have fighting an extra rank. So essentially they come with spears. They're not good spears though, because they're weapon skill 2, strength 2. I think at one point Giant Rats were meant to be quite good, and a lot of people were saying that you had to spam them and they were one of the best units for Skaven. I think there's been an FAQ which has seriously changed them, making them not as appealing. And for me, I don't really see why you would take them. If you want some cheap, crappy spears, you might as well take them on your Clanrats, which you have to take. You're taking those Clanrats anyway. So normally I wouldn't bother with spears on my Clanrats, but if you're thinking to yourself, I want some Giant Rats, well, why don't you take that unit you're having to take, which is almost attacks anyway, and then spend essentially 1 point per spear, rather than these guys, where you're spending what it equates to 3 points per spear. These guys are a pass if you can't tell. Another pass is the Night Runners. That's right, it's time for us to get into the Eshin boys. And I want Night Runners to be good, but they're just going to die. They're just going to die, man. So their movement 6, their weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 5, 1 attack, leadership 5. They're basically like a clan rat with an extra pip of movement, which is good. The thing is, they only come with hand weapons. You can upgrade them to have additional hammers at 2 points a model, and that's like what, 9 points because they're 7 points each. Might as well for that take 2 clan rats and have 2 attacks and save a point. You can give them slings, but they're 2 points each, so it's like don't like that. I mean, slings are okay, but don't like that. Or you give them throwing weapons for 1 point model, which still, they can't get any armor whatsoever. They are skirmishers, which will protect them a little bit, but my dreams of a full clan Eshin army have been absolutely scuppered. Do you know how you make these guys good though? Like genuinely good? Give them poison weapons. That's what you do. However, if you do that, you are going to take away from the other big clan Eshin unit, which is the Gutter Runners. Gutter Runners are essentially Night Runners, but better in every single way. They have got better weapon skill, they've got better ballistic skill, and they also have got better leadership. They come as standard with 2 hand weapons, and they can take poisoned attacks, and you can give them throwing weapons. They have a laundry list of special rules: evasive, feigned flight, fire and flee, move through cover, scouts, scurry away, skirmishers. Gutter Runners are genuinely really good. There's a reason why you see a lot of competitive Skaven armies running them. They only have one downside, which is they are 14 points each. And then if you take poison and throwing weapons, you are looking at 17 points. That is a phenomenally high price tag for a Skaven unit. Phenomenally high. But I have seen them used, I have seen them in action, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that Gutter Runners really are very, very good. So in my mind, Night Runners, big sad, they're a pass. Gutter Runners, big smiles, they're a smash. But we've looked at all the infantry choices for the regular war clans and Eshin and Skryre and Moulder. There's just one clan left, and that is Clan Pestilens and the Plague Monks and the Plague Censer Bearers. Plague Monks are movement 5, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 4. Hello. Initiative 3, attacks 1, leadership 5, and they are only 7 points each. They come with just hand weapons. You can give them extra hand weapons, but it is 2 points per model. You might think there's no bloody way I'd ever consider doing that. But when you take into account that That would give you 2 attacks. And then they have Frenzy, and that would give you 3 attacks. That's a lot of attacks! That's a lot of attacks for 9 points a model. Most people will pay 5, 6, 7, 8 points for one guy with 1 attack. Sure, it might have halberd or something, or a spear or something, but this is one guy for 9 points who's going to have 3 attacks each. Even if you don't bother with the extra hand weapons, and you know what, I would be tempted to leave them at home and just be like, look, I'll just take my 2 attacks. I'll take my 2 attacks for 7 points a pop. That's still really good. Honestly, if I had to choose between a bloody Empire Spearman and this guy, I'd probably go for one of these guys. Because they've got the extra movement, they've got the extra toughness. They are going to die like flies, though. Don't let that toughness fool you. They have no armor. They have no way of getting any kind of armor. But I actually quite like them. The problem is Frenzy's a double-edged sword, of course, so they might get led around by the nose as people tempt them to places. But I think that Plague Monks are all right. Not great, not terrible. I think if you are going to take a clan Pestilens themed army, then you might be tempted to put a few of these in there. However, that's the rub, isn't it? That's the problem, isn't it? Because you'd have to take a clan Pestilens themed army. That means you're going to have to pay the tax for those plague priests. And what really, I think, kills Plague Monks, because you can tell I was quite hot on them, but what I think really kills them, and unfortunately it takes them from a smash to a pass, is they are not a core unit. These guys should be core. If you take a Plague Priest, these guys should become core. If that happens, I actually think they're good. Because you don't have to take Clanrats, which are basically anti-light infantry, and then these guys, which are basically anti-light infantry. You want one or the other, right? So Plague Monks are going to get a pass, but with the caveat that if they ever become core, I think they are actually a smash. If you're going to take a Clan Pestilens unit, you want to look at the Plague Censer Bearers. They are quite pricey at 13 points a pop. I am getting flagellant vibes from them. They do have the same stat line as Plague Monks. The big difference is the Plague Censer. It gives them strength +2, so now they're strength 5 at AP -1 with poisoned attacks. They only get the strength bonus in the first round of combat, but they always get to reroll rolls of 1. The limiting factor is you can only take 2 to 10 of them. They've got no armor. They could be whittled away quite easily, but they are skirmishers as well. Plague Censer Bearers, the points cost is, I don't like it, right? But I'm going to give them a tentative, very tentative smash. I think a unit of them could be quite punchy. And I do like poisoned attacks. And we are in a meta of big, horrible monsters and dragons and things like that. The dragon's probably going to get the charge on them, I will admit that. But if they are able to get the first hits in, it's a decent number of poisoned attacks. And poison is really strong. That just about covers all of the infantry choices. And Skaven is really an infantry army because they scuttle underground, so not much cavalry for them. But we are not done yet. They do have a number of chariots, war machines, and monsters that we are going to want to have a little look at. First up is the Screaming Bell. Now, you can't take the Screaming Bell on its own. It can only be taken as an upgrade for a Greyseer. It's a very good upgrade, but bear in mind that Screaming Bell costs 185 points on its own, and then you've got the Greyseer who's going to cost 200 plus points, and you are looking at a combined unit of 400 points. That is 20% of your points total in a 2,000 point army. A lot of Skaven players swear by the Screaming Bell because it is really, really cool, and it is a big force multiplier. I remain to be convinced by one though. I've played against Screaming Bells 5 or 6 times. It's never... I don't think it's ever had 400 points worth of impact on the game. You see, the big thing about it is that it makes your your Greyseer magic resistance 3. It also is like D6 plus 1 impact hits. It causes terror. It has a 5 plus ward save, but and it causes terror, but you want to really make use of that tolling the bell ability. This is the big tamale, the hot tamale with the screaming bell. If you toll the bell, then you roll 2d6, and whatever result you get can sometimes be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. If you roll a double 1, you get a magical backlash, and every unit, friend or foe that is in this model's command range was D3 strength 4 hits with an AP -2. D3 is not too bad, but it's definitely not ideal. And don't forget that this model is within range of its own command range, so the model itself also takes those hits. It's Dissonant Peal on a 3-4 until the start of your next turn sub-phase. All enemy units within 8 inch models suffer a -1 to leadership. That's decent. Morale's a big deal in Old World, so that's decent. 5-6, Wall of Unholy Sound until your next start of turn sub-phase. All friendly Skaven units within 18 inches of this model gain the Fear special rule. Fear's a bit rubbish. I mean, yeah, you would have Fear and you'd probably outnumber people, but it's still a bit rubbish. 7, Resonant Power. Until the end of this turn, all friendly Skaven wizards within this model's command range may apply a +1 modifier to any casting roll they make. This is the one you want. This is the one you probably want to roll for every time. If you could pick, if you could pick and like take a wound on the bell, I think people would pick this one at some opportune moments. 8-9, Emboldening Clamor. All of the friendly Skaven units within 18 inches gain immune psychology. That's good. It's immune psychology, so you're not going to take panic. You're not going to take... you don't really care about fear, but you're not going to take terror tests. 8-9 is good as well. 10-11, Rapturous Ringing. All friendly Skaven units within 18 inches gain extra attacks. Oh my god, that's so good. It's all friendly. It's not like infantry, not like pick one. It's all friendly units. I take it back. Resonant Power is good, but if you had to take a wound to pick one, you'd go for like Rapturous Ringing for sure. And then you've got Sonorous Knell. Any enemy unit that was within 18 inches of this model, including units that are fleeing or that are engaged in combat, must take a leadership test. If the test is failed, the unit suffers D6 strength for hits with no armor or regen saves permitted. Ward saves can be attempted as normal. 12 is fine, but there's a lot of units out there which will just like pass the leadership test. 12 is fine. Rapturous Ringing is amazing. Resonant Power is amazing. Emboldening Clamor is very good. Overall, I think that the bell is good, but I think that for 400 points to maybe get something decent, bleh. For me, I'd take the Greyseer every time. I'm not convinced that the Screaming Bell is worth it. It's cool. It gets a smash, a rule of cool. But if we're being brutally efficient, tactical, and trying to make best use out of all of our points, and think in an army that generally feels a little overcosted, Screaming Bell is an expense that the kingdom can not afford to pay. In a similar vein to the Screaming Bell, we've got the Plague Furnace. This is a 170 point upgrade for one of your Plague Priests. Now, this isn't as expensive. Bear in mind that you could just take a basic Plague Priest for like 60 points. This could come in as little as 230 points. You probably would want to have a few other bits there, but it just goes to show that this thing is a lot cheaper. I'm not sure it's good, but it is a lot cheaper. It is Strength 5, Toughness 6 with 5 wounds. It has 4+ armor save, and it has Fear and Frenzy. Impact hits D3 plus 1. Magic 1, poisoned attacks, and stomp attacks D3 plus 1. So it doesn't have quite as many impact hits, but it does get stomp attacks, so it kind of balances out. The Great Censer. That is the big weapon that it comes equipped with. Stomp attacks made by a Plague Furnace represent the Great Censer being let loose to swing into the enemy with devastating effects. Any stomp attacks made by the Plague Furnace have an armor piercing characteristic of -2. That's really good. In addition, whilst in 3 inches of one or more models with a special rule, the noxious fumes billowing from the Great Censer may cause cause enemies to suffer a massive modifier to their toughness. That's also pretty good. Yeah, honestly, I quite like the Plague Furnace. I know it's not great, but man, it looks all right. You've also got the Billowing Death, which is a breath weapon. When making a roll to wound with this weapon, a roll of 2 is always a success. Either target stuff is so high that the weapon would not normally be able to wound. In addition, no armor saves are permitted. You can take ward and regen. It's strength 2. It's a strength 2 plague weapon, breath weapon. As someone who has run a steam tank with its silly little steam gun on top, I don't care if you don't get armor saves. Strength 2 means you never bloody wound anything. Now, as much as I have been warming to the Plague Furnace, the big problem is that there's just a better option. If you want something that's going to go in and stomp the crap out of people, don't bother with the Plague Furnace. Instead, have a look at the Pit Abomination. Many of the units we've looked at so far have been tentative smashes or just downright passes. The Pit Abomination might very well be the only unit in the entire Skaven book that I can say unequivocally without messing around is a smash. Firstly, it's 210 points. It's a little pricey, but it's cheaper than a Greyseer on a Screaming Bell, and it's cheaper than a Plague Furnace. It has random movement 3d6. That's good. Means the enemy can't do anything but hold against it when it comes at them. Random movement units are really, really strong. Weapon skill 3 seems kind of low, but then when you realize it's got strength 6, and also it's toughness 5, and it's got 6 wounds, and it does d6 plus 1 attacks, it's just solid. It's also unbreakable. It does stomp attacks, d3 plus 1. It's got regeneration 5 up, which makes it a pain in the ass to deal with, and it's magic resistance 1, and it is immune to psychology. It's just good. It's just good. It has a number of special rules that are decent as well. Abominable attacks. Instead of attacking normally during the combat phase, Pit Abomination may choose to make one of the following abominable attacks. Feed. Nominate a single enemy model in base combat with the Pit Abomination to be the target of this attack. If that model is hit, so you've got to roll 1 hit, it suffers D3 automatic wounds with no armor saves permitted. Ward and regen saves can be made as normal. So basically, you can choose to, rather than attack normally, you can do 1 feed attack, and if you hit, then you just do D3 wounds. That's pretty good. Avalanche of Flesh. Place a small 3-inch blast template so that its central hole is directly over the center of the target unit. Any model, friend or foe, but not including this model, whose base lies beneath this template, risks being hit and suffering a single hit using the strength characteristic of this model with an AP of -2. That's pretty good as well. Facing a big horde of guys on like 25mm bases, just go bang. Because a lot of them are going to be hit automatically by the template. You probably get, I'd say you probably get like 4 guys just automatically, and then you're probably gonna touch another like 8 after that on 4-ups. I mean, it could be more than that, but on 4-ups you're looking at 8 hits in total. So you could do d6 plus 1 hits, or you could get against a big unit an average like 8 hits at AP -2. So yeah, I really like the Avalanche of Flesh. You've also got Too Horrible to Die. The first time, that's a good hint. The first time a Pit Abomination loses its last wound, roll a d6 before removing the model from play. On a 1 to 3, it dies. On a 4 to 5, the great corpse shudders and a swarm of rats bursts forth. Place a rat swarm of 1 model within 3 inches of this model, then remove this model from play. So you get a free rat swarm. But the big one is if you roll a 6. The Pit Abomination jolts and shudders with unnatural vitality before rising anew. The model immediately recovers D3 wounds. I like it. It might just get back up. It's not likely to happen, but basically on a 1 to 3, nothing happens, and on a 4+, you get a positive result. And that's not bad. It's not bad at all. If you do choose to attack normally with this thing, you've got Warpstone Claws, which are strength 6, AP -1, Armor Bane 1, and magical attacks. So if you're ever wondering why you would not do the Avalanche of Flesh, A, it's because you might be attacking like a single model or more elite unit that doesn't need to be belly flopped on. B, you might find something ethereal. So you want to be able to still be able to target it. The Pit Abomination, the Great Bear Bad, is just solid all the way through. Its points cost isn't prohibitively high. It's tough enough that you can rely on it to take a few hits. And it's, even though its attacks feel super random, there's enough randomness there that it actually becomes fairly reliable. Like, it's D6 plus 1, it's D3 plus 1 like the stomp attacks. You can choose to do the belly flop instead. Yeah. Pit Abomination, really, really good. Any Skavenist, I think, worth its salt wants to have 2 of these bad boys in there. It's the first thing you write into your list. But if you like randomness, then look no further than our next unit, the Warp Lightning Cannon. This is awful. Okay, so it's got a cannon-like profile. It's T6 with 4 wounds, which is pretty decent, and then you've got 3 crew, and essentially they've got 3 wounds as well. Obviously, you either kill the cannon or you kill the crew. If you're shooting at it, you do wounds against the cannon. If you're in combat with it, you do wounds against the crew. So it doesn't have 7 wounds in total. It's basically got 4 or 3, depending on how it's getting taken out. It's got light armor. You don't worry about that. The big thing is the weapon. Its range is 8d6. It might have a phenomenally long range. Or it might have a 4-inch range. We just don't know. We just don't know. This weapon does not use the Cruise Ballistic skill. Instead, it shoots using the Lightning Strike special rule. And this weapon uses the Warp Lightning Misfire table. So, okay, so it's 8d6 range. It doesn't have a strength. And it's AP -3. Okay, so what is the Lightning Strike special rule? When shooting with this weapon, draw a straight line 8d6 in length from the model's base edge. Any model, friend or foe, whose base falls under this line suffers a hit, the strength of which is determined by rolling an artillery dice. Oh goody, so it could be strength 2. If a misfire is rolled when rolling to determine the strength of this weapon, something has gone horribly wrong. Roll immediately on the Warp Lightning Misfire table to determine exactly what. So what's kind of mad about this is even if the Warp Lightning Cannon is on a hill, it doesn't matter. You draw the line, and if that line goes through your own dudes, even though you're on a hill and you're sort of shooting over the top, doesn't matter. You get hit by the Warp Lightning. Because it's just a straight line. Anything that line goes over gets hit. So you can't even like put them on a hill to try and like mitigate that. Nah, doesn't matter. Now the Warp Lightning Misfire table is brilliant. Roll a 1. Meltdown. The machine and its crew explode in a spectacular green fireball. The model fails to shoot this turn and instead is destroyed and immediately removed from play. Brilliant. 2 to 4. Energy Overload. This happens like most of the time. The unfathomable energies spin the war machine around before it unleashes a potent blast of Warp Lightning. The Warp Lightning Cannon shoots with a strength 6 in a random direction determined by a scatter dice. So it could just like spin around and just blast right down. Blast right down your line. Oh man. 5 to 6. It just fails to shoot this turn. Oh, I love the Warp Lightning Cannon. This is Skaven personified. 110 points is a lot to ask for it, but I love it. It is, from a tactical point of view, clearly a pass. Like, clearly beyond any shadow of doubt, it's a pass. But from a let's feel like we're actually playing Skaven perspective, let's get that quintessential Skaven randomness back, the Warp Lightning Cannon is a smash. But what is possibly the biggest pass in this entire book is the Plagueclaw Catapult. This thing is phenomenally shit. Like, I think this might be the worst, one of the worst units I've ever seen. It's definitely the worst stone throw I've ever seen. So essentially, it is a stone throw, okay? It fires a rock, you can do it indirectly. The reason it's so bad is it's strength 2 or, oh, bully, it's strength 4 if you get something under the central hole. Sure, it's AP -3. Don't care. Sure, it always wounds on a 6. Woo! Nah, man. The reason you take stone throwers is not to splat big hordes of guys. That's what you might think they're for because they have a blast. But no, that's not why you take them. The reason you take stone throwers is to try and get that central hole over something and to just brain, like to absolutely brain like an enemy dragon or an enemy big monster. That's why you take it. You want to think of them as like the trebuchets from what is it? Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King. You know the trebuchets that just absolutely like just yeet those big rocks like and just like splat things. That's what you want to think of them as. You don't want to think of them as like big mass like unit killers. And so the fact that this thing is like boasting that it always wounds on a 6, that's shocking. That's absolutely shocking, man. Give me a regular stone thrower who's like it's strength 4 or strength like 8, because that will allow me to like brain big things with strength 8. I'm wounding dragons on 2s, and if I hit units, I'm gonna be wounding on like 3s. Yeah, the Plagueclaw Catapult is literally the worst unit I've ever seen in Warhammer the Old World, and I am including the Hellstorm rocket battery from the Empire. And on that rather sad note, we have now reviewed all of the Skaven units. My overall hot take with Skaven is that things just feel a little overcosted. Like, you know, look at the Plagueclaw Catapult, 110 points for that. Who is ever going to pay that? If it was 50 points, you probably still wouldn't take it. Same for like the Warp Lightning Cannon. It's just like, it seems like things are just overpriced. And it seems like things are really restricted. If you are going to build a good Skaven army, I think you're going to want double hell pit. I think you still want a Greyseer, but keep him off that Screaming Bell. I think that's just too expensive. And I think you want to take your Clanrats with your Rattling Guns. And I think you'd want to have a big unit of Stormvermin in there. Don't go like completely bonkers, but maybe a unit of like 30 would be pretty good. You probably want a Chieftain in there with like the Fellblade, because we know he's decent. But yeah, that's where I think the strength of the army is. Rattling Guns, Help Abominations, and Stormvermin. I think those are the big winners. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Have I got anything wrong? Have I missed anything? Do you agree with my hot takes or do you disagree with them? If you are a Skaven player, I'd love to hear from you, because I don't play Skaven myself, but I play into them. So I've come at this from the perspective of someone that's played against Skaven and determined which units feel horrible to play against, which units I generally can handle. Also, let me know what other factions you want to see me review. This was the first Legacy faction. I've had a lot of requests from people saying, Mordian, have a look at the Legacy guys. So this was the first one. But are there any other factions, Legacy or otherwise, that you want me to do a smash or pass on? Don't forget, as always, guys, to like and subscribe. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm, which just loves any kind of interaction. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.